3 weeks before her delivery date, Maddie Grace looked great. But just a week later, on December 2nd, we were rushed to the medical center in Macon, Georgia. Maddie had taken on too much fluid. She was at least 13 pounds, and our doctors weren't sure that she would even survive. Amazingly, she survived the delivery and was diagnosed with fetal hydrops, an abnormal accumulation of fluid in 2 or more of the fetal compartments. She was also diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, also known as overactive thyroid, and chylothorax, a leakage of fluid from the lungs collecting in the chest. She was put on a ventilator, and chest tubes were inserted to drain off excess fluid. Doctors told us that she had a 50% chance of survival. God's people were praying. Maddie was being held in the arms of Jesus, and she was fighting to stay alive. We found comfort in Matthew 19:26, which says, "But Jesus looked at them and said, 'With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible.'" During that first week of Maddie's life, her mom and I cherished every moment we had to spend with her, praying that each visit would not be our last. We trusted in the words of Psalm 27:14. "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord." After 3 long weeks, Maddie was able to come off of the ventilator. And after the first month, the chest tubes finally came out, and Mommy was able to hold her baby for the first time. Feeding was still a concern because she had not learned to suck, and we needed to stay at the hospital for a while. But God's people were still praying. As we waited for Maddie to learn to eat, we empathized with Nehemiah's words, "The joy of the Lord will be our strength." It didn't take long before she captured my whole heart with her beautiful eyes. She began eating and gaining strength, and we were getting closer with each and every day to leaving the hospital. Finally, on January 12th, Maddie was ready to go home for the first time. She went home with a feeding tube, and Mommy and Daddy became full-time nurses. Our 2 boys, Noah and Eli, got to see their baby sister for the first time that day, because heightened flu risk allowed for only parents and grandparents to visit the hospital during the time of her stay. Thankfully, the feeding tube only stayed in a week after we went home, as she was eating well and gaining weight. God spared our precious baby from fetal hydrops, and at that time, she was the only surviving case that the medical center in Macon had ever seen. After 6 months of prayer and a careful low-fat diet, the lung specialist cleared Maddie of all chylothorax problems. And a few months later, another specialist cleared Maddie of hypothyroidism. God performed a modern-day miracle and healed our baby girl. Joshua, a young boy from Canada who just happens to have the same birth date as Maddie, had been praying daily for her healing. He was able to hold her in person when Maddie took her first international trip. He was so excited that God had answered his prayers. The doctors could not explain this miracle, and later admitted that they thought that she wouldn't make it. Many of our doctors and nurses agree that there is one reason that she made it, that being our wonderful Savior, Jesus Christ. Maddie made an appearance at the 2010 preemie party hosted by the medical center, and was reunited with many of the nurses who cared for her. One nurse in particular was James, who we call our hero. He was a nurse who spent that first critical night with her. Mark 11:24 says, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." We joined with David from Psalms 27:13, saying, "I would have been without hope if I had not believed that I would see the loving kindness of the Lord in the land of the living." And that is what faith can do. God still moves mountains, and we are honored that He chose our family to show the world a miracle.